everyone. Welcome to Hope for Our Times. And listen, today we have an incredible program planned for you. You're going to learn a lot and hopefully be encouraged and strengthened and become more resolute in what the Bible actually teaches about the days that we live in. My guest today is Jan Markell. Jan is the founder and president and host of Understanding the Times. She began her ministry journey in the Messianic movement and served with pro-Israel agencies and Jewish evangelism ministries in 1982. She established Olive Tree Ministries with 8 books authored and a dozen DVDs produced. Jan's impact extends far beyond her early days of full-time speaking engagements across the U.S. In 2000, she launched Understanding the Times. It is now broadcast on over 1,000 stations. And I can't imagine any of you don't know Jan already. But Jan, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
This is going to be a very good program, everyone. And I promise you, we are all going to be learning an awful lot today. But we've really got to get our facts straight with things that we see going on. And we're going to start working through some things. But first of all, I want to make sure I invite you all, if you're near Seattle, coming up in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, I'll be up in the Seattle area, Lake Stevens, with Pastor Billy Crone, Eric Barger, and Pablo Forsini, Friday, Saturday, and I believe Eric will also be speaking there on that Sunday too. You can check that out at Hope for Our Times. It's going to be a terrific conference with my good friends, Eric, Pablo, and Dr. Billy Crone. Going to be fantastic. Hope you can all join us. Stand With Us posted this. Anti-Israel hate group at a local university in Brazil became physically violent as they attempted to cancel an event about Israel with over 200 student participants. The incident became so violent, some of the students who at first supported the protests were caught on camera outside the scene confessing it lost all its legitimacy. Fortunately, local security intervened before anyone sustained serious injury. Shockingly, there were no arrests made. We are seeing this type of thing happen all over the world right now, especially the Western world. And that here in the United States, we're watching an explosion of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel protests happening all over university campuses. Many of you saw over the weekend, Columbia University. We're going to roll a short video right now. This is just from this morning. It's with a professor, Jewish professor at Columbia, just trying to get to his class, and his key card was shut off by the university, and they claim it was because he was protesting, which he was not. He wasn't protesting against the protest. Now that is bizarre to me, but this is the claim they make. Watch this video, it's a short video.
Okay, I'm walking with Professor Shai Davidai right outside the gates of Columbia University's campus. He's going to try to enter campus. He has his Columbia University ID. He's trying to enter.
1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shai.
Sorry,
Hi.
1 second. I want to get this on video that they have deactivated. This is the sound. This is the sound of civil rights being denied of a Jewish professor. I want you all to remember this sign.
Did you get any prior notice?
I did not get any prior notice. I emailed them and they wouldn't respond. I got an email 2 a.m. yesterday calling this a counter-protest. And I said, no, this is not a counter-protest. This is a Jewish professor who has a right to be on campus, and you're denying him.
Wow, Jan.
Wow.
Yeah, we're watching this, and you've written a lot about the Holocaust. You've talked about it going back 1930s, 1940s. We look at where we are today. I've got to ask you this question. Did you ever think you would live to see anti-Semitism like it is right now?
No, and I've written one book on the true story on the Holocaust, so I had to research the whole topic, very horrible, horrible topic, but I never thought I'd be watching, as I have the last, many weeks now, long live Hamas, death to the Jews. I remember what happened in Europe, and it was just horrific beyond comprehension, was kind of localized. But the passion today, the anger today, has hit every major capital of the world with demonstrations that are insanely pro-Hamas. Really? Pro-barbarian. Is that the level of character that mankind has sunk to? We know that people are going to love evil and hate good in the last days. Is this an illustration of loving evil and hating good? Every man doing what is right in his own eyes. And we just saw this Jewish professor. Does he not have rights? Apparently not. So he is a victim of this present whole death to Israel, death to America, death to all things good and all things righteous. I know, Tom, I can't quite get over it. My breath is taken away.
Yeah, to me, it's shocking. When I think of the days of Germany, things were localized to that part of the world. But this is happening everywhere. It's happening
everywhere.
Uh-oh. I just spilled water on my laptop. That's not good. But this is happening literally all over, especially the Western world. We already know how China feels. We're finding out that China is helping to fund certain things with Iran, which I want to get into, because so is America, and I want you to speak on that with both Obama and Biden. But where we are right now, and it's disturbing because it really is global this time. And yet, we know biblically Israel, the Jew is going to be the people group that the Bible's going to focus on during the last days. And we are watching the Jew as a people group. And then we watch the nation of Israel, the land, I should say, of Israel becoming also this problem. Jerusalem is the epicenter. This talk will eventually shift to just Jerusalem. But I look at this, and it's hidden under this term of anti-Zionism. But what a lie that is.
Yeah, and my question would be, and if I were a little more energetic, I might try and go out and interview some of these folks. Do they even know what a Palestinian is? Do they even know that, there is no Palestinian history whatsoever? Do they even know what they are for and what they are against? They love the limelight. They love the attention. The publicity clearly is addicting. But I don't think they really fully know what they're doing. And if they do, then it's even more troubling because, again, they are cheering for barbarians. That's all I can say. Nobody's thinking about what happened on October 7th of last year and some of the grim realities that took place on that day. Nobody talks about that. It's just, all of this pro-Palestinian. Tom, there is no such thing as a Palestinian, so please give me a break. They don't exist. They're Syrians, Jordanians, and Egyptians is what they are.
They do not exist. We look back at the history of how the term Palestine came about with Hadrian wanting to really put the lid on the Jews, eliminate the thought of Jews from history, eliminate their thought from the land. He comes around, he says, okay, we know the story. Let's translate the name Philistine into this Latin name. So you have Syria, Palestina. He changes the name of Jerusalem, I believe it was to Ere Capitolina.
Yes.
And so we have this, and he was so effective, the devil was so effective in using Hadrian, that here we are, 1,900 years after Hadrian, we are dealing with this lie. And it's such a strong lie that, Jan, my Bible right here, in the back, it has a map, and it says Palestine in the time of Christ, when that name didn't exist.
That didn't exist.
Didn't even exist. So we have these things, but the people have bought into it. We're constantly dealing with it. And it seems like we're definitely a minority, even within the church, when we proclaim these things. It's the truth is not being taught. It's just the CNN sound bites, even Fox News. It's just their sound bites that are pro-Hamas, pro-barbarian.
Right, and then guys like Tucker Carlson came along, this is a couple of weeks ago now, and he furthered the disaster. Tucker has literally millions of viewers and fans. I mean, I've been one of them, I can't say I am any longer, because he let this so-called Palestinian Christian, Munter Isaac, just trash Israel and the history over there, and repeated one lie after another. And Tucker would normally jump on all these false statements and speak the truth. But I think he was siding with this Munther Isaac. But that just furthered the disaster is my only point, because of the millions who follow and respect Tucker Carlson. So, and I'm not suggesting that he's part of the church. I have no idea. His original background was Episcopalian. His wife is a Bible-believing Christian. I do not know where Tucker stands as of this day, but that was a revealing interview. And I think some of this fervor, it's catching some good people and it's sweeping them up. And maybe they don't know enough of history that they go along with the lies. Well, isn't that sad, though, Tom?
It is, because there's a lot of people. Tucker's not the only one. He may be the most influential, him and Joe Rogan, but the most influential. But there's a lot of them that are very popular, that people I used to watch, and pre-October 7.
Yeah.
And I would engage with things they said. It comes down to Israel, and it's just these lies that are constantly coming forth, and they're believing them. I've asked people online, come with me, visit with me in Jerusalem. We will go into these areas that you talk about, that you say these things are what they are, and we'll see firsthand for ourselves. We'll talk to Muslims, we'll talk to Jews. Well, we'll do it all. But I look at it as just awful. When we think of this, here we are, it's Passover.
Mm-hmm.
And we think of the Biden administration. And the things that are coming out of the Biden administration,
yes,
to me, have been very anti-Israel. It's lay down your weapons. You're not going to get any more weapons. We don't give any money to Iran. But these things, they do give money to Iran. Jan, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Between Obama and Biden, we've now given Iran about, I don't have the exact, it's around $100 billion. And I think it would be safe to say that America financed this invasion that Iran perpetrated. This is now 10 days or so ago. We're financing their weapons program. As a matter of fact, Mr. Biden knew 72 hours before the invasion of Israel by Iran, the artillery attack and all the ballistic missile, drone, et cetera. Biden knew 72 hours. Turkey knew 72 hours ahead, and they apprised our White House and our State Department. So we basically financed that invasion, which has terrible consequences, folks, to any country that does this. And then I think the other troubling thing, Tom, is our foreign policy coming out of our White House and State Department. It's appease. It's one word, don't. I mean, isn't that terrifying to you as an Iranian? Don't. It's coming from the White House: ceasefire, demand a Palestinian state, no demands for Hamas, and then just put the pressure on Israel. Don't retaliate. Restrain. Don't retaliate. Tom, this is just setting us up for, I'm afraid, a Genesis 12:3 curse that is going to be staggering, and it's not necessarily decades away. It could be minutes away.
Very well could be. Bill Koenig, you've had him on many times. I have. He's a very good friend of yours, and he'll point out, hey, this decision is made here. 2 days later, this happens. And look at this when we think of Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, where many people out there mock us now for using that. People on the right, I'm watching them, I see them, they're mocking us, they start laughing. Yeah, like that's really a problem, right?
Well, laugh at God.
Well, exactly. And then, in Joel chapter 3, I can't help but think of this. Behold, in those days, and at that time when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, I'll gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people, my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations. They have also divided up my land. And I'm reading this article. This is right now. This is from this morning. Let me see. I'll find it here. Biden's message, Passover message: ceasefire, aid to Gaza, and two-state solution. Those three things. So we know the aid to Gaza is not going to the people who live there. We all see people partying on the beaches in Gaza, even while the world is saying Israel's killing them all. But they're saying, lay down your weapons. All the stuff has to go to Gaza, which really goes to Hamas, and then we're going to have a two-state solution. We're going to divide the land. This is disturbing with Genesis chapter 12. I will bless those who bless thee, I'll curse those who curse thee, and the billions of dollars the Biden administrations have given to Iran in the lies. Well, we aren't funding anything. No, we're not sticking up for Iran. Even Saudi Arabia knows the U.S. is.
Well, and that was an interesting angle of what happened back some 10 days ago. I mean, the Saudis participated on Israel's side, and so did Jordan. Whoever thought we'd live to see that? But that's kind of a new day of allies in the Middle East. But at the same time, strange allies in the Middle East as America pulls away more and more and more and more. And that's why I'm not endorsing anything here, but something needs to change in November, or this whole issue of Israel is going to sink America. And granted, we have to go away for global government anyway, so maybe this is just speeding that cause.
Well, I want to get to Antichrist here in just a minute. A couple other questions I want to ask you, but first I got to ask you this. People want to connect with you. I can't imagine anybody watching this doesn't already follow you, but let's just suppose there's some out there that don't. How can they follow you, Jan?
Why don't you just go to olivetreeviews.org and sign up for the e-newsletter or the print magazine. Everything's free. The e-newsletters once or twice a month, and that's probably, I would love to have them become listeners. The program is posted to my website, olivetreeviews.org, under radio. It's on 1,000 radio stations, and then it's electronic all over his channel, many places electronically, but olivetreeviews.org is the easiest way to catch every. Tom is one of my most frequent guests because he's so verbal and articulate. Now, I mean that, Tom. I love having you as a guest.
You're very kind. I love having you as a guest too. And I do want to reiterate this, everyone. If you have not yet signed up for Jan's newsletter, of course, I want you to sign up for mine too. It's free, and so is Jan's. And listen, go to Olive Tree Views and sign up for her newsletter. You're going to be blessed. Updates on events, all different types of things, interviews that are done. You get everything there, as Hope for Our Times. So sign up for both of them if you don't. And these things are,
Amen.
These things are absolutely free to do. And folks, we have to get the word out.
Exactly.
We can see what is happening out there.
Exactly.
The devil gets all of his lying news out there. It's everywhere. It's
That's
on
right.
all the mainstream media. It's on most of the social media now. And we are finding that we are a much smaller group than we may have thought we were a couple of years ago. Jan, interesting, I was with Brandon Holthouse not too long ago. I've done a lot with Brandon lately.
Yes.
And he just brought that up. We are finding out just what a minority we are who stand with Israel, who continue to preach both the Old Testament and New Testament and believe that the prophecies of the second coming of Christ are real. And Jan, I want to thank you because you've been such an inspiration for so long, decades now, for in leading this.
Well, I think my question, Tom, is this issue that we're talking about, and that is standing by Israel, is that going to be the dividing line now in the church? Is that going to divide even evangelical Christians? It's certainly dividing the more liberal church from the conservative church, because in the past, traditional evangelical Christianity, slam dunk, no brainer, they're pro-Israel. That's beginning to whittle away now. And I'm just wondering if what happened in October and the fallout has now become the big divider in the church. And so more churches are falling off. That's what I'm hearing. And if they're not falling off, they're being silent. They're saying nothing. They're not even, you and I have talked about this before, they're not even praying for the peace of Jerusalem. It's as though nothing is going on geopolitically. They don't want to talk about it, but particularly if it has to do with God's land and God's people. They may even be a premillennial and they don't want to talk about it. We know the amillennial preterists, et cetera, won't, but now premillennial are beginning to back off. I don't have a solid reason for that. I'd love your perspective.
Yeah, I've noticed it. And there were churches that I would have gone and done a prophecy conference at sometime in the past, it was pro-Israel. People ask, why do you have a prophecy conference that you have to talk about Israel? Well, Israel's the epicenter.
Yeah.
If you take Israel out of the equation, you're just talking about predictions and, oh no, I spilled my water again. So that's not good. I talk too much. I'm talking too much with my hands.
It's Jews who do that, not Gentiles.
Yeah, well, apparently I've got this thing going too, wherever it's from. So, but with this, I think there's peer pressure that comes to the pastor. If kind of like if you go back 10 years, why would they not teach about Bible prophecy, let's say 10 years ago? Well, they were afraid that it's going to make people afraid. They didn't really understand it. They were afraid people wouldn't come to their church. And quite frankly, their donations would go down, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you
wrote a great article on that, and I use your article all the time.
Yeah, it's neat. I still see that article pop up, and that article is like, I think, 12 years old. But so we see that. What's happening with Israel, though, it's more... there's so much more pressure coming from the right and the left, obviously the left, but now the right too, to not stand with Israel. And then they'll start pointing out, well, look at the Jews. They run Hollywood, they run the banks, they run, they start going down this path, and people don't think through it. They don't think through this process of what.
Well, here's the thing, Tom. Everything you say is so dead right on. I think our responsibility, because people are writing us, calling, whatever. If folks are in these kind of a church now and the church is backing off, what are they to do? That's what they want to know. Is it time for them to leave? Is it time for them to say something? And sometimes they can't get into the church leadership, but they are really troubled and need to know. And you're a pastor. What would you advise them to do?
Well, interesting. I had a conversation with a friend. We went and visited up in Northern California just the other day, and he's at a church now where they don't talk about Israel much, but he said he started meeting with the pastor, and he said now the pastor, he recently prayed for Jerusalem from the pulpit. Okay. He is willing to listen and have conversations about Israel now, and his presence there is making a difference by staying there. The problem, and if you're in an amillennial church, I don't think that's going to happen. But if you're in a church where the pastor claims to be premillennial, listen, in a kind way, just approach him. When people approach me as a pastor, sometimes some people are just kind of mean. Don't be mean. Don't have to be a jerk or anything like that. But just ask him, what's your position on Israel? Why don't you talk about Israel? And I can guarantee you, for the most part, it is a pressure to conform to what's basically out there, even in the world, believe it or not. That's why we see things going on with worship in churches and so forth. But a lot of pastors and that I know, they won't talk about Israel. They won't let me come in and talk about anything prophecy related because they don't see it as relevant, even if they are premillennial, and they're afraid it's going to just take people, it's going to get them afraid. And they just want to, quite frankly, they want to bring happy messages. They want their people going away every Sunday feeling good and making sure they're serving, and they come back the next week and they put money in the tithe bin. That's really what it comes down to. And I'm saying that as a pastor who's talked with a lot of pastors, and I know the sentiment that's there.
Tom, that is just simply stunning, tragic beyond words. And look at what time of history we're in. If there's ever been a time that they need to be taking a stand, it's now. My goodness. I mean, this is what you described is almost demonic. And I say that in light of our times. In light of our times, every church needs to be taking a stand.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Jan, again, you've done a lot of research on the Nazi days. Isn't, from your perspective, what you see happening within churches very similar to the pastors who just stood down? Yeah. They didn't want to get involved when it came to the things of anti-Semitism, the Jews being taken to the Holocaust. They were, hey, this is the mindset that it was from my
Yep.
understanding.
Yep, there were three groups. There was the ones that went along with it, the ones that stayed neutral, like Niemöller, and the ones that protested, Bonhoeffer. So there's three groups. This is Nazi Germany. And today, there probably are two groups today. But my concern is the group that's going along with it. Again, I think it gets down to theology. It gets down to two things, I think, and these are just thoughts coming to my mind as you've just outlined it. Number one, what we're talking about won't result in church growth, won't fill up the pews or the offering plates. And secondly, I just think it's a new day. It's a new day in the world. Look at Columbia University, and sadly now it is a new day in the church. And this low-level hostility in the church goes all the way back to Martin Luther, is now boiling, and the result is what you just described.
Yeah, and even when this is also my take on what's happening within the church. We all, for anybody who's looked at the Holocaust and from a biblical perspective, we've all heard the story of the train car with the Jews in it that went by the church. And the pastor told the choir to sing louder so they wouldn't hear the Jews, and they're screaming and they're crying in the train car. And what's happening in the American church, Jan, again, my perspective, and I'm speaking from a pastoral perspective, the pastors are saying, hey, we just need to do church. We're just going to come here and sing the songs. Listen, it's all going to work out okay. There's a reason why that's happening, but the bottom line is the gospel needs to be preached here at Sunday morning. Therefore, we're not going to bring in the thought of Israel. These things are so negative, and besides, Israel does a lot of things wrong. So what we're going to do, we're just going to sing louder. We're just going to have church because we are being faithful to the Lord. That's what they were saying at that church. Let's just sing this hymns louder.
Yes.
And it's a different way of doing the exact same thing. It's a different way of
singing louder. Yeah, so true, Tom. And I hope your listeners, those who may be in some of these churches, I'm not saying get up and leave, but at least go speak to those in leadership at your church and try to get them to see the truth. If ever Israel needed a friend, it's today. And if it's not going to be from within the church, then it's hopeless. She will be all alone. And maybe this alienation will drive her to the Lord. That's our hope anyway, that any feeling of alienation will just drive them to seek Jesus.
Yeah, Jan, that's what I see happening right now. God is moving Israel into a place of turning to him. I was speaking with one of my Israeli friends not too long ago, and you look back at Israel's history, there were not very many times that Israel didn't look to their neighbors. At the time of Judah, they looked to Egypt to save them from the Babylonians, or the time of Assyria, whatever it was. They would look to a different neighbor to save them, and Israel has this habit of doing that.
Yes.
But Jesus said in Matthew 23, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. I believe Israel is being moved to that place, but we as believers in Christ must stand with Israel. And I think, Jan, I'm really curious your thoughts on this. I think right now we are being tested in the church. And the people out there that are saying God's done with Israel, for example, replacement theology. Well, what you're saying then is grace is good for the Gentile, but there's no such thing as grace for the Jew. That's really what is the message that's being proclaimed, and even within the Gentile churches that have been premillennial, they're starting to go into that same place because it's a constant fault finding. Anything a Jewish person is doing right now, well, look at what this Jew did. Well, look at what Netanyahu did, and it's nonstop.
Well, this is a setup, Tom, for Daniel's 70th week, the time of Jacob's trouble. This is all trending towards the tribulation, and Israel is just sort of in a setup position for what's going to play out then. But remember, then in the tribulation, they're going to have some security for 3.5 years by Mr. Antichrist. He's going to make all sorts of promises to them. And I think he will keep a lid on some of this until the midpoint when absolutely all hell breaks loose. I mean, I'd like your perspective on that.
Well, that's a great question because we've had to think through this also. You're the one that said, hey, Antichrist is Mr. Fix-It. So I've used that zillion times because he is. We have a world that's in a mess right now. Lawlessness is abounding. The economy is eventually just going to blow. We know all these things, but we also know they're all biblical at the same time. They're prophetic. So we know they're going to happen. Well, so is anti-Semitism. But if Antichrist is Mr. Fix-It, he has to get the Jews on board with his plan. So
and he does.
He's going to be so charismatic. He will win them over. And he also has to have the ability to, as you said, put a damper on the anti-Semitism that's happening. And it will be. I think it's going to be controlled from the outside for, say, 3.5 years. However, if we look at anti-Semitism right now, if anybody out there, guys, if you're honest, it is horrific what's happening right now. Unbelievable to see it happening everywhere. Jan, we were at the Ben Gurion airport coming home about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and the lady who was helping us there, walking us through the process, she asked us, well, where are you going? Los Angeles. What's it like in Los Angeles? And said, you're seeing it. We're 2 hours outside of Los Angeles, but we still can see it. We still have to go there. We have Jewish friends, Fairfax District or whatever. If I'm Jewish, I'd be a little bit fearful living in the States right now, especially going to university. But with that being said, he's got to control it, make it seem like he's got anti-Semitism under control. But Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, so we know it's still there. It may be subdued for a time, but when Antichrist gives his green light and demands to be worshiped as God, it is going to be, all hell's going to break loose, and the anti-Semitism that we're watching all over the world is going to explode at that point. And that, to me, is very troubling.
But I think the Jews are being set up, even now. They may not know it, but once that Mr. Fix-It comes on the scene, they are going to have to lean on him eventually and turn to him for security. He's going to let them build their temple. He's going to give them some great security. If someone came along, let's just say someone showed up at Columbia University today and said, hey, I can make all this right. Said this to the Jewish students. I can make all of this go away. I can make all of this just settle down, and you will be in perfect safety, you Jewish students at Columbia or these other institutions. I am guaranteeing your safety. Do you think they wouldn't fall for this? My goodness, they're hiding in closets. They'd fall for this hook, line, and sinker. And that's just a little microcosm of the whole world during the tribulation, where they're going to look to him for security. He's going to betray them, something terrible, but they are going to have peace and safety for a short season.
That is an excellent observation. So Columbia University today, a microcosm of what's coming. That, I can totally see it. Now that you put it into that perspective, he comes along, I can fix this, I can guarantee your safety, you're going to be able to go to class good. I'm even going to build you a temple. You would be willing to do almost anything if you knew that that person could actually pull that off for you. And that person will have the ability to convey that message that they will. So why would you not?
It'd be crazy not to.
Yeah. Wow. What
I think there's absolute panic in the hearts of a lot of Jews. And even if you're not on that institution or any of them, you can't tell me, if I were to call my Jewish relatives this afternoon, which I'm tempted to do, I can assure you I would hear panic in their voice. They can't, I talked to one recently, they can't believe what's going on. They don't have the biblical perspective. They had no idea that they were going to be hated like this in their lifetime. It's one thing to look back to 1938, when most of listeners here weren't alive in 1938. Okay, now, 80 years later, 85 years, my goodness, it's 1938 again. I can tell you it is. It's just on a broader scale. The sentiment is very similar. The fear in the hearts of people is very similar. Where can I run to for safety is very similar. But at the same time, it's global. not just in the heart of Europe.
It's global, and I think it also gives us a really good understanding of how far along we are on the timeline of God fulfilling his prophetic calendar. And
yes, it reminding us how late.
Yeah. By the way, everybody, if you want to support Israel, you can do that through Gihon Springs, and we'll have that link in the description. You can check it out there. It's also on the website. Gihon Springs, great ministry. It reaches out to unsaved and also Messianic Jews over in Israel. It's fantastic ministry. Go ahead and check it out. GihonSprings.org is what I believe the website is. Jan, as we look at this with these things with Antichrist coming up, I want to go back to America for a minute. But before we go back to America, and where, I mean, just really startling, but I was reading that the protests that have been happening, blocking some of the highways, the pro-Hamas protests are funded. Some of them have been funded by Act Blue. Okay. And, you know, the funding has to come from somewhere. These things aren't just organic that are happening. So we know there's money that is behind these things, just as there was money in the days of Hitler's Germany. There's money that had to fund certain things. In fact, sadly, some of the money for Hitler came from some American corporations, which is another story.
Oh, you're exactly right.
In and of itself, but it's happening right here and it's funded. So I would say, everybody, don't be fooled into thinking these are just automatic grassroots and people are easily manipulated. And students have been, their minds have been warped over the last several years of some of the teachings they've been given. So we watch this. It's terrible to see all the anti-Semitism. Lawlessness is just growing more and more. And Jan, as I look at this, you offer great hope. What would you say to all our viewers?
Well, you know, today is Passover, and my ultimate exhortation would be that everyone put the blood of the Lamb of Jesus on their heart, and in other words, to become a born-again Christian today. That's the most important thing. If someone watching isn't, beyond that, my hope, Tom, in that you and I are believers, is obviously our blessed hope, and we've kind of been talking about how all of this is setting the stage for the blessed hope, because all of this is predicted for an end time generation. And of course, once it's in the tribulation, everything gets accelerated. We're not here for that. We're going to be removed from before that hour of testing comes upon us, Revelation 3:10. So I just encourage everyone. And again, I mean, our churches may be silent, but that doesn't mean that all of us can't somehow join together, even if it's online, and encourage one another, because heaven is our future. Heaven is our home. In heaven, there'll be none of this division, this friction, this alienation, this antagony. You know what I'm trying to say. There'll be none of that going on. So it's going to be perfection. And not only that, but every health problem on the world will be done with. So I'm looking forward to that time. And I think it's sooner than any of us can possibly imagine. I really do. And some of the horrible things, even though it's tough to watch, they're telling us, I think, that Jesus' return is very, very near.
Yeah, I do too. And I look at this whole, and really Israel is the timepiece.
Yeah, it's a timepiece.
The fact that the world's attention is now on Israel, it's on the Jewish people, and the land of Israel is not a coincidence. And
absolutely.
It's global. I mean, the things we're hearing about with Russia saying, hey, starting to line up with more and more with Iran. I mean, we're watching so many different dynamics, but the attention is on Israel. It's eventually going to shift, not just on Israel as a whole, but on Jerusalem itself. And we know the attention is going to go there. Jan, what do you see for America? I know you've been asked that question like a million times, but things don't look real good.
I have a hard time, and I am repeating myself just a little bit, in that the demons seem to be unleashed on October the 7th. It's hard for me to see that prosperity is going to the toothpaste is out of the tube, I believe. It's hard to get it back in the tube. And a shift in November would be helpful. I'm not sure that that kind of reprieve is promised to us this time. Who knows? All of us want to see America prosper. At the same time, I think that would certainly extend and delay the timing of the rapture. Wouldn't have to, but I think it might incline to do that. I think chaos is just a constant reminder that we're running out of time. So I just believe that anything that happens now probably needs to be spiritual and within the hearts of every one of your listeners, more than a political shift that's about to happen. It may happen. I kind of doubt it's going to happen. I think that the Bible is reminding us that Jesus is coming, not 10 years from now, maybe 10 minutes from now, based on everything we've talked about today. And that should be good news for the believer. If you're unsaved, again, apply the blood of the Lamb to the doorposts of your heart.
Amen. And get it's just a reminder, get the message of the hope of Jesus out there. It's like, don't waste any time.
No, don't waste any time. We're running out.
Yeah, we work while we have day. Right now, we've got daylight. So we do all that we can. That's why Jan and I both do this. Jan, one final thought for anybody who's Jewish that's watching this. You're Jewish, you're a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. What would you say to them?
Well, the most Jewish thing you can do is embrace the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua. And believe it or not, around the world, untold number of Jewish people are doing that. And that was a trend that began probably in the 1970s and is just picking up steam more and more and more as the years and the decades go by. It's no longer unusual to be a Jew for Jesus. And there's kind of a mini revival going on. So, I mean, I hear from these people, and it's one of the encouraging things that's happening today. I can tell you that.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. Jan, you have any final thoughts for everybody?
No, thank you, Tom, for what you're doing. You're getting the truth out. You're getting the information out. And I just think we need to double up on that in whatever time we have left, because my goodness, we're seeing so many of the things. I think the greatest, and you referenced it, the lawlessness, the spirit of Antichrist, that alone should tell us that I am coming quickly, because that's exactly what's to happen right before Jesus returns. And look, I'm in the land of George Floyd. It happened 20 minutes from me, so I know lawlessness, and it's not pretty to watch. And I have a feeling this summer we're going to see lots of it for various reasons. That's another program.
Yeah, indeed. Jan, thank you so much for joining me today. Always wonderful to have you on. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Excuse me. Make sure you go to Jan's website. You can see the link. It's in the description. And sign up for her newsletter. If you haven't done so already, it's free. My newsletter is free also, everybody. So sign up for both of them. We really appreciate it. Helps us to be able to get the word out. We also appreciate it on our own YouTube channels. If you like, subscribe, and share, the algorithms do pick up those things and help us to get the word out. God bless you, everybody. Thank you for joining us.